This is a portrait, self-portrait of Diego Velásquez. He was born in Seville, and his grandparents had moved from Portugal and were tradespeople who had possibly converted from Judaism. This is relevant because when he was knighted in 1658, he claimed to be descended from lesser nobility, although this hasn't been established. As far as we know, he had humble origins. When he was young, he was taught languages and philosophy, but showed an early gift for art. So when he was 11 or 12, his parents sent him to study with Francisco Pacheco for the next 5 or 6 years, and in 1618, when he was 19, he married his teacher's daughter, Juana Pacheco, and by the age of 21, his reputation was assured. He became court painter and friend of the king, Philip IV, who would sit and watch him paint. Velásquez was also responsible for the king's collection, and he acquired paintings from all the great artists, and that collection is the basis of the collection at the Prado today. He's one of the most important painters of the Spanish Golden Age, painted scenes of historical and cultural significance, scores of portraits of the Spanish royal family, other notable European figures, as well as commoners, culminating in the production of his masterpiece, Las Meninas. This is Old Woman Cooking Eggs, his first masterpiece that he painted while he was still living in Seville, and he was only 18 or 19 years old. It demonstrates his ability to paint people and everyday objects directly from life. At the time, these sorts of paintings, these popular genre scenes, were known as bodegones, which literally means a pantry or tavern or wine cellar, but it's come to mean still life. At the time, it was regarded as a very low form of art, and it was much despised by connoisseurs. One wrote, "Workman," and he was probably referring to Velásquez, "of scant knowledge or reflection, who debase the noble art to vulgar notions, as we see today in so many pictures of bodegones." Velásquez himself was very conscious of his mastery of painting, and he painted to dazzle. He didn't paint as a trompe-l'œil, as an illusion, in order to fool you. He painted so that you could see the paint, you could see his technique, you could see the brushstrokes, but you were amazed by his ability to represent anything. Look at the line of objects that he's chosen to demonstrate his skill on at the bottom right. The dish, the knife with the shadow reflected in the dish, switching then to the shiny surface of the metal pestle and mortar, the onion, then to the carafes standing next to it. The people themselves, it seemed to be rather a mystery. It's the illumination perhaps is coming from a window to the left of the painting, but the two figures in the painting, the woman we believe was modelled by his mother-in-law, and the boy, a village apprentice, are not looking at each other. In fact, they're not looking at anything. The woman is not looking at the egg. She's staring possibly at the source of light. The boy is staring towards us but downwards. It's as if they've been caught unaware of each other, unaware of us, suspended at a moment in time. Incidentally, you might wonder about the eggs. Sometimes this picture's called Old Woman Frying Eggs, and sometimes Old Woman Poaching Eggs. There seems to be some disagreement amongst scholars about how the eggs are being cooked. This is the Surrender of Breda. On his first visit to Italy, he was accompanied by Ambrogio Spinola, who was served in the military and was famous for conquering the Dutch city of Breda a few years prior, and that's what Velásquez is celebrating in this masterpiece. You can see the keys of the city of Breda being handed to Spinola. This is the only surviving example of a female nude by Velásquez. It was a rare subject in Spain at the time because it met with the disapproval of the church. What we see is Venus, goddess of love, regarded as the personification of female beauty, and shown here with her son Cupid, who's holding up a mirror for her to look at both herself and at the viewer. It's believed that it was commissioned by the Marqués del Carpio, and we assume it was displayed privately in his collection to avoid the censure of the Spanish Inquisition. It's known as the Rokeby Venus because it ended up in the collection at Rokeby Hall, but it's now, as you can see, in the National Gallery, London. This is a portrait of Innocent X that was painted during Velásquez's second trip to Italy from 1649 to 1651, and many critics consider it his finest portrait. The Pope, Innocent X, was regarded as highly intelligent and shrewd. He was born Giovanni Pamphili and was initially wary of having his portrait taken by Velásquez. He wasn't aware of what the artist had painted previously, but he relented when he saw some examples of portraits painted by Velásquez. The portrait was only displayed to his family and was lost from public view. Apparently, when the Pope saw the finished portrait, he exclaimed, disconcerted, "Troppo vero," all too true, although he was not able to deny its intrinsic quality as a portrait, but perhaps he thought it gave away too much of his personality for comfort. It's been described as the greatest portrait ever painted. This is his great masterpiece, Las Meninas, or the Maids of Honour. Before talking about interpretations, let's go through the figures that we see. Starting on the left, we have Diego Velásquez himself holding a paintbrush and palette and looking towards us. In the centre, there's the Infanta Margaret Teresa, who's staring at us, or the King and Queen. I'll come back to that. And then either side of her are her maids of honour. One is handing something to her, and the other is just starting to curtsy. In the foreground on the right-hand side, there are two dwarves, one looking towards us and the other kicking or resting a foot on the mastiff. Behind them, there is the chaperone of the princess talking or looking towards a bodyguard, and in the doorway, it's the Queen's chamberlain pausing and holding back a curtain. One of his jobs was to open doors for the Queen, and it's been suggested that he's opening the door and holding the curtain back as the royal couple are about to leave. Now, the royal couple, if you look in the centre of the picture on the back wall, what looks like a portrait is a mirror reflecting the images of the King and Queen. So they are standing roughly in the position where we are standing, and Velásquez is painting a portrait of them on the canvas that we see on the left. Now, the canvas is unusually large. In fact, it's the largest canvas Velásquez painted is precisely this picture, is the canvas of Las Meninas, and so what he's painting is the painting that we're looking at. And on coming back to the Maids of Honour, the fact that one of them is curtsying or just starting to curtsy suggests that maybe the King and Queen have just finished having their portrait painted, or this session of the painting, and have stood, causing the maid of honour to curtsy and causing the Queen's Chamberlain to open the door at the back and to stand holding the curtain ready for her to depart. The painting raises many questions about art, illusion, who's being painted. Is it us? Is it the king or queen? And this analysis has generated perhaps more art historical documents, articles and papers than any other work of art. No time to go into that now, as this is the last picture of Velásquez that I'll be discussing. He died in 1660, roughly 3 or 4 years after painting this, and he was made a knight in 1658, 2 years before he died, and it's believed that the symbol of the order of the knight on his chest was painted after this picture had been finished.